in the world. I have literally interviewed people that have given us information that prevented wars, and that's pretty significant. And the people you work with on the counterintelligence side are generally really, really, really well-trained, intelligent people. And if it's an adversarial nation, that's just it's a mindset. It's not, it's just politics. And if you can put politics aside and make the connection as a human being, I didn't work with any bad people. I worked with phenomenally great people that were very humbling to work with and collaborate with and try to recruit. And I don't care what you call it. It was, I was very fortunate to work with some phenomenal people from around the world that made massive difference in the security of the world. And that was probably the coolest part.
What is the mind of a spy like? Following on Seekers Mindtalks is a conversation with Robin Dreeke. He is a former FBI counterintelligence specialist and a master spy recruiter. Having led a life in Secret Service, he has acquired a rather interesting worldview and life experiences worth exploring too. He has expertise in areas of communication, relationship building, and of leadership. I'm your host Raj, and enjoy the conversation with Robin on the Seekers Mind Talks. Swimming, you do swimming.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like your hobby?
It's moving is what I do a lot of. So I swim 2,500 yards. So it's about an hour nonstop of freestyle. And then I walk about 6 miles a day. So I generally walk about 2 or 3 times a day. And I listen to Audible books. And so it's kind of part of my daily rhythm.
How important is habits for a human, as far as a human being is concerned? I'm pretty sure that you were a man of habit, and you were accustomed to it. But a person who's beginning on their journey for self-improvement, they must find a hard time. It's harder in the mind. It's more of a mind game that I assume. How hard is it for that, or how does one tackle that mind issue?
Well, I think part of it is viewing a routine as a healthy thing, as long as it's a healthy thing you're adding to your routine. And if you're trying to start something new, James Clear, great book, Atomic Habits, it's important not to go from 0 to 100. It's 0 to 1 mile an hour is always best. And so if you're trying to improve something in your life, if you're trying to make a change in your life, if you're trying to do something drastic that requires discipline, you'll fail. Because if you think to yourself, I have to do this, that mere way of just saying it, I have to, says that it's going to require discipline. And at some point, you're going to fail from the have to, as opposed to thinking in terms of, I get to do this. And so for me, my daily habits are I get to go swim in the morning. I get to go for a walk because when I walk, I get to listen to great books and I get to learn a lot. And so there's a big difference between I have to do this because when you have to, you won't want to, and I get to do this. And so it's important to pick one small, tiny habit at a time to start building upon to get what I call reps. Because so say you add 5 minutes of exercise to your life today, which is not a lot. Do a 5-minute walk when you get home from work. And 5 minutes after the course of a week is 35 minutes. Well, 35 minutes over the course of 4 weeks is how much? So you keep cascading that, and eventually it starts a parabolic curve of change.
And I read that book. One interesting idea that I got from the book is like how to change yourself as a person. So he had a really good example on this. It was about smoking. So apparently there was a study done on smoking or something in which they asked a person, do you smoke? So some people replied to us, I'm not a smoker, even though they used to smoke in the past, right? And that simple mind shift of like, I am not a smoker, that kind of change your internal monologue and sets your mind in a different direction.
Yeah, it's how you identify yourself, and what you identify yourself as is what you become. Absolutely.
Mind of a spy, like, man. I wanted to ask you this
Mind
first.
of a spy.
Yes.
Mind of a spy recruiter. There's a lot of different things in there. So I'll give an overarching, broad, sweeping mind of anyone thing, which encompasses a spy recruiter, or anyone in life. Because my job every single day inside the FBI was to build relationships. And if you're going to be a spy and get secrets from other nations or proprietary information, in order to do that, you have to build relationships. And if you're going to recruit someone that's doing that, you have to build relationships. If you're trying to sell a product, you're not selling a product, you're selling yourself. And so you have to build relationships. And so everything in life, whether you're recruiting a spy, being a spy, or working with your kids, working with your spouse, I don't care where it is, the entire process of life is building healthy, strong relationships.
Because
And what
human mind is universal.
Yeah, and we are genetically and biologically coded to be social creatures. And if we focus all our effort on being a good, healthy social creature, everything in life falls into place because you can't solve any problems by yourself. Everything requires either knowledge you gain from someone else, a collaboration with someone else, or ideas that are coming from someone else, collaborating together, innovating together. Everything comes down to together. And people that are thinking they have all the answers by themselves are going to fail majestically. You're going to create a humbling experience in your life and you're going to fall down. And so the fun thing about spies and spy recruiting that people don't often think of, because you're thinking of James Bond and movies and Criminal Minds and things like that. And Hollywood talks about the fun things of manipulation and subterfuge, and people that do that fail, because if someone is going to put their life in your hands and be willing to potentially sacrifice everything to collaborate with you, if you're going to have any kind of deception, subterfuge, and manipulation, they're not going to trust you. No trust, they walk away. It's completely anti-success in anything in life, especially spy recruiting or being a spy.
So it's that direct mind to mind connection that we are looking for.
100%. The hardest thing to train with it, and I say train because in order to become a master of anything, you have to first start painting by numbers, I call it, because it's an art. It's definitely human interaction is a beautiful art. But in order to become an artist, you have to put in a lot of reps. And I call them repetitions, reps. And the human connection, it's really, really a simple thing to say and a harder thing to do. And it's being deeply present in the now, in the moment, as Eckhart Tolle calls the power of now. And just be present. Hear the words being spoken and match it with what the other person is seeking and be that resource for the other person. Be the person they can't wait to see walk around the corner. Be the person that has unreasonable hospitality. I just read another great book. It's a beautiful book on this of being a great service industry. Just go above and beyond for those around you. And the only way you can do that is completely focus on the other person, their friction points in life, their pain points, the challenges and priorities they have, and ask yourself, what am I going to do to be a resource, an available resource, because maybe they don't want you in your life. Maybe their tempo is a little bit off from yours. So just be an available resource for their success in those areas of pain points and be present and match that tempo.
Yeah, because I imagine it's gonna be the hardest things because people are surrendering their labels, right? Because we all build our personality based on label. I'm from this country. I'm from this group. I think like this, so I stick my personality to this. But when you have to build that trust with that other person, that's definitely looking at the world from their point of view. And I think that's we can tie that up with general communication as well. Whenever you're talking to another person, there's a high probability that there's miscommunication happens, that whatever you're trying to convey, you take it up in your mind in a slightly different way. And when that happens 10 times, the whole idea gets squashed.
Yeah, because that generally will happen when we enter a conversation, dialogue, or relationship with an agenda that we're trying to fit that other person into. And I liked how you phrased that, labels. And when you can let go of the labels and just be present and truly pay attention to the other person, you're not trying to serve your own agenda. Requires such a higher level of letting go because the greatest connections are made when you enter a relationship and you offer yourself as that resource with no expectation of reciprocity. I'm very aware of the things I need to be successful, but if the other person doesn't want to be part of my life, I'm not even going to let them know about those things because it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. It's got to be about them. And the only label, it's funny when you said labels, the only thing that entered my mind, the only label I have is the one I'm proudest of and I work the hardest on and everything fuels is father. 100%. That is it. I try to be a great dad. Husband also, but I mean, my calling in life is to be the father of my kids. And everything I've done in my professional life has given me the skill set to be a better father.
Mm. Because it's that human ego that is talking from the inside. I imagine this happens a lot in conversations. You have that monologue, that's at least a lot many people have that monologue going on in their head, and it's very hard to shut that down. Do you have any experience on how we can numb that down? Because at that point only we are listening thoroughly.
The only thing that I think we can really do is respark our curiosity.
Okay.
Our own internal monologue comes from our own insecurities, our own identity, our ego, our vanity, all those things. And these aren't bad things. These are things that we're born with that keep us safe when we're younger. But at a certain point, if you really want to make a connection, you got to let go. And the and the and it's very hard to stop being someone or stop being a certain way. It's a lot easier to add something to yourself to mitigate it. Great work on emotional intelligence (EQ) talks about not taking something away, but what do you add to balance that dichotomy of things? And the greatest thing I think we can add, each one of us that we're born with, it's the greatest survival tool we have is curiosity. And when you can add a spark of curiosity when you're conversing with someone, that sense of self will start going away because when you say something, I get fixated and fascinated by look at that word choice he used. Look at the background he has. I wonder what inspired him to choose that particular background. He's in Toronto right now. I wonder what kind of experiences and what was the life path and spark that inspired him to live in Toronto and do this for a living. So those are the kind of sparks that you get of curiosity. And when you're thinking about that, what else is in your head? Nothing. It's completely focused about who is Raj? Where's it come from? I mean, what's that life journey like? Because everyone is this beautiful reality show. And if you can have the curiosity to dive deeper on that, that's when you're truly present for others. And you hear everything they say. And when you hear everything they say, you can start filling out the nooks and crannies to try to get even a fuller picture. And when you're doing this, what is it? It's empathy. It's context. And people aren't looking to be agreed with as much as they're looking to be seen and heard. And by demonstrating these things, you are demonstrating that you see them, you hear them, and you value the things that they're saying. That's all we're looking for genetically, biologically, and socially from other human beings. Do that, and
Yeah.
you will have great, healthy relationships.
It's funny that you mentioned Eckhart Tolle because he has this whole message. He's been talking through his whole life, giving out this whole simple message, right? There is
Yep.
only the present because past is just a memory. It's not there.
Yep.
Future, it's just a thought. It might come. It's a you're thinking about it. It's also not there. All we truly have right now is this moment, and it's not even a second. It's not even a millisecond. It's not even a nanosecond. We can't even design it. It's just we can't even explain it. It's this moment that's here right now. That is what it is real. Rest everything is just a movie that's been played out in your head. Certainly it it helps you to run through the world, but all you have is right now, right? That's such a powerful message to the world. And what do you feel about that?
In general, yes, but you can fall in love with it too. I liken it to flow state, and I think everyone has experienced that moment or that split second when, or longer for some people, when you've actually hit flow. And people, I think, have had that experience. Say you've been driving home from work at some point, or on a train, or riding a bike, or running, or involved in anything where you become so completely absorbed in it now that time all of a sudden goes away. And for all of a sudden you are become completely aware. It's like, oh my gosh, What just happened? I was so engrossed in what I was doing that time became irrelevant. Well, it's because you're completely present in flow in the now. And what's really, really interesting is people try to capture it. It's a great feeling when you're in flow because you feel completely at one with whatever it is you're engrossed in, whatever you're doing, or just one with the universe, which is a beautiful gift to give someone because in those moments, you're completely there for that other person, just right there. And the easiest way to do that, you can actually consciously do that. At least I've discovered I can, and everyone can, by letting go of the agenda. Be present, and the way we get present is get curious. So before I do a conversation with someone, Raj, I just let go. I have no agenda. I have nothing I want to say. I have nothing I'm trying to find out. I literally am just there to hear the words that you're saying, seeing and experience how you're looking, seeing and experience the reactions that you're having, and being very curious about all of it. And then just following whatever thread by asking very, very simple questions that I call what questions. What inspired you to do that? What was the spark or inspiration to move there? What was next? All those things. Then you then have a buffet that you can transmit out. And all I'm doing is I'm listening to that buffet of information that's completely 100% you. And I have no agenda with it. I'm just curious about this, this. Now, the way our brains work, which makes this beautiful for a conversation, is I've done all my homework. Say I'm a spy recruiter. I know what I want to find out. I know what my ultimate agenda is if I have one for recruiting someone or selling a product or service if you're in business, or just I have an interest in someone. I want to develop a relationship. I always have that. I don't even have to think about it because our brain has it way back here, tucked away. But when I'm completely present and now I'm asking and engaging my curiosity for you, my brain subconsciously is making these linkages. And there where you don't even have to think about it. You're just present and you hit flow state with a human being. And so this is when both you walk away from that conversation and say, that was one of the best conversations of my life. That is literally the only goal of every conversation you should have, is that. I love asking this question. So for everyone listening or watching or whatever you're going to view us on, ask yourself this question. And there's kind of two parts of this. The first one is, if you only had 2 hours left on this planet, so you don't have a year, so it's not a bucket list thing, you have 2 hours left, what do you do? What would bring you joy for 2 hours? And I guarantee you this, after you give some reflection, I'll give you a cheat answer here. It's going to be a great, lively, fun, joy-filled conversation with those people that matter most to you in life. Mine is my children. I want to sit around. I want to be laughing and seeing the beautiful things they're doing in their lives. I'm getting misty just thinking about it because that brings me the greatest joy on earth. I want that to be my last 2 hours. And so then ask yourself the second part. What are you doing to have those conversations right now with everyone? When you just light up inside, when you see someone walk around the corner that you haven't seen in a while, and you just like, oh my gosh, look who it is. I'm so excited to get to talk. It's Raj. I haven't seen him in so long. I can't wait to have a conversation. Ask yourself, what does Raj do that makes me feel that way? And then ask yourself, reverse it. Am I that for someone else? And so that is how we have these kind of relationships, and that is how we have these kind of dialogues. This is how we become very present. It is the greatest gift you can give another human being, is that complete presence in the now, as we've been talking about. And so how do you recruit a spy? How to be a spy? Give that gift. How do you be successful in anything in life? Create those kinds of relationships where people cannot wait to see you. They can't wait to have a conversation with you because you made it all about them.
Gotcha. You're not gonna believe the next things I'm about to say. I had a kind of same like a story moment yesterday. I was having dinner. I was watching Ricky Gravis, and he was talking about life and how it's valuable to us. And he was talking about one day you'll be having your last meal. One day you'll be kissing somebody for the last time, and you'll not even know it. At that moment, my mind shifted a little bit to the moment, and I was just looking at my food. Oh my God, every second is valuable.
Yes.
And I had I had a good meal that I haven't had in a while. Like I was present, I was having the same food, it was the same taste, but the feeling was different. That joy you mentioned, it came, and I don't know that how that thought came. It just popped out into my head, right? Oh my God, every moment is valuable, and if you can truly stay in the present, every second is a gift you have.
It totally is, 100%. When any of my kids, when I do a show like this, when I go to bed at night, I put my do not disturb thing on everything. But there's three people that can break through it no matter what, because I will drop everything for them, both of my children
Mm-hmm.
and my wife. And I will drop absolutely everything to have a conversation with them, even if it's just, like, my son is a Marine Corps officer, a pilot going through flight school right now, and he is flying for the first time today in a new plane that they're training in, and he's going to be calling me, probably in about 30 or 40 minutes, to tell me about that flight. We've already had 3 conversations today. This is my 24-year-old son, who's my best friend, along with my daughter. She's my best friend on the girl side. These people in my life, I drop everything for. Why? Because every single conversation with them is the most important conversation I'll ever have in my entire life. And so if you treat every human being you interact with like that, and you're that kind of present in the moment, who wouldn't want you in their life? It's pretty
Correct.
simple, actually. It's just hard to do. Very simple to know, hard to execute.
Do you meditate?
There's a lot of different ways to meditate. So yes, I do meditate. My meditation is movement. My brain relaxes when I move, and I contemplate and reflect when I do that. So there's three kind of phases of meditation for me. Walking, but that's when I'm absorbing a lot of information. Swimming, when there's no information coming in, I'm literally just going through rhythmic motion, and then going to sleep at night beforehand. I have an ambiance, just ocean, that I listen to for a while before sleep. So there's three phases that I kind of do throughout the day.
That's a new perspective. I never heard someone describe meditation that way.
There's a lot of different ways of meditation. So another book, Tasha Eurich wrote a book called Insight, and there's a science behind meditation. I'm extremely loving of Eastern philosophies, whether it's Eckhart Tolle and the Power of Now, or Thich Nhat Hanh and the Buddhist monk who I absolutely love, the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu's book on the Book of Joy, Mahatma Gandhi's book. I just read Nelson Mandela's book. I mean, I am 100% into all that, but I love the intersection of Eastern philosophy, meditation, and science, because the science behind all this is extremely solid. That's why another book, Body Keeps a Score, is another great one, and then all the works by Dr. Joe Dispenza on what our mind does to the health of our body is extremely profound and extremely accurate as well. So yes, I am all in on all this because it creates extreme health. There's another book out there, Longevity, which talks about all the same things as well. And so I'm going for the Centenarian Club in order to beat our genetics, which generally tops us out at around 80 years old. If you want to reach 100, you got to go for the longevity.
Funny that you mentioned about Nelson Mandela. I had a guest and we talked about stoicism. Uh,
Yep.
how important is it to have that resilient mindset? Because your mind, as we talked about earlier, doesn't want to be here. The emotion guides us,
Mhm.
right? How to have that resilient mindset. I'm pretty sure you've gone through different times and phases in your life where you had to be in intense pressure, and the mind, it behaves oddly when pressure comes, and at that point resilience is the answer. How do we deal with that?
Got to look at the big why. I've caused a lot of illness in my own life when I was younger because of stress, anxiety, challenges like this that make you so intense that it destroys you physically. And the way I move through that and the way I do things now is I call it, I don't do crazy here. I will only engage with a calm brain. And if a situation or an individual is starting to cause what I call my own internal crazy brain, I slow it down, I back up, and I reevaluate And the first thing I do is I own it, as Jocko Willink and Leif Babin talk about in Extreme Ownership, a dichotomy of leadership. I own the behavior that induced someone, inspired someone to have a trauma response to me. And because everyone's inappropriate behavior generally is caused by an internal trauma response they have, and that's triggering their insecurities and things like that. So I think in terms of what am I doing to cause that, which gives me greater empathy to connect and not get resentful, which is a horrendous emotion we have towards another human being, which causes all the internal ugh. And I just work the problem in a very stoic way. So, Ryan Holiday, great author. I've read every single book that he wrote, and you're talking most likely about Stillness is Key and Discipline is Destiny, are two of his books that talk about that. And you counter most of these things through what I suck at the most, and that is silence. Just be quiet here and be in the moment. So we'll bring in some Eckhart Tolle with silence, calmness, slow that tempo down, and ask yourself, what can I do to be a healthy resource for others in the moment? And if I don't have the answer now, I'll say nothing. So that's how I approach everything. I only will do healthy relationships. And if someone's not ready for the gift of a healthy relationship, I'm sorry. That's on them. That's their path they're walking. And I'll be here when they are ready for one, but today they're not. And so I won't be engaging in that particular lane with them.
What about the subject of body language? How important is it? Nonverbal cues in communication can help us a lot.
Huge. It's beautiful. There's a lot of phenomenal experts out there. I've been trained and worked with absolutely the best in the world. I'm very biased. I have two great friends, both Joe Navarro, wrote the book What Everybody is Saying. He was one of the founders of my behavioral team in the FBI. He is a international nonverbal expert. One of the other people on my team is also great on nonverbals, Dr. Jack Schaefer. And then we have Dr. David Matsumoto, who's also another amazing nonverbal human body language expert. And what all of them are saying is really basically simple things. Comfort and stress. Nonverbals are telling us, is someone comfortable with us or not comfortable with us? And comfort is what we're seeking. That's what we're craving. And so I'm always looking for and assessing, am I creating comfort with someone or am I creating stress with someone? Baseline behavior is what we normally see when we first interact. But what I'm looking for comfort, I'm looking for elevation up and out. I'm looking for, as if Mark Bowden's another great nonverbal expert, and he describes it as if you are especially in Toronto, you probably get this. It's really, really cold outside and it's frigid. The wind's blowing and howling. And so you have layers of coats on, clothing all bundled up like this. This is a stressed looking move. And the feeling that you want to induce someone to feel and inspire them to do is as if you had all this bundled up and all of a sudden you go inside. And there's a nice, big, warm, crackling fire. The lights are turned low. It's a nice wood house maybe, and a steaming hot cup of coffee or cocoa sitting right there. And the house is so warm, you got to start taking the layers off. And you start opening up. And so that's what you want to inspire someone to feel, is those high comfort moods where you have palms up, ventral displays, eyebrow elevation, head tilt, exposing a carotid artery, smiling, full facial smiles. And when you combine those high comfort displays with tempo matching, which is really, really key and critical. So I tend to have a higher tempo because of my personality, because of my genetics and where I grew up. Both the nature and nurture side of me is extremely high tempo, which can be extremely off-putting to someone who has a slower tempo. I have to watch and match that tempo and hopefully go a little bit slower so that I don't make them feel unsafe, because that's really what we're doing when we're interacting with human beings, is what can I do to inspire someone to feel safe with me, because that's ultimately what we're looking for. And nonverbals are huge cues on that end and on that front. So that's what I'm making sure I'm trying to do at all times.
Yeah, one thing that caught my attention is like this is a strictly male thing. I don't know if it's true, but when you trust a different male that when you walk on the road, or if it's your friend, if you trust them, you do the nod this way. You're exposing your jugular, right? I don't know if it's true, but that kind of struck my head. As a normal person, what can a normal person learn from a spy's mind?
See, it was funny. Great word, normal person. Everyone's a normal person unless your chemicals are in a battle in your head. Um, so what we all can do in every moment of the day is, I think, exercise what I call the keys of communication. And these are
Mm-hmm.
out of all the what I call death by Robin, where it's like I threw a lot of information, a lot of words, and a lot of concepts, thoughts, and ideas. But if you can boil everything down to these simple things to give that great gift to others of being present and being there for them and make the conversation about the other person, it's these four things. One, seek their thoughts and opinions instead of sharing your own. Two, speak in terms of their challenges, priorities, pain points, and any kind of friction points in their lives instead of yours. Three, which has been an arc throughout our conversation, is be non judgmentally curious and present. And that curiosity is key. And then four, when appropriate, you empower them with choices. Use the word if. If that sounds good to you, if you're comfortable doing that, is a great way to kind of bracket things. And so if you do one of those four things, maybe a few of them, in every statement you make and everything you write, email, text, or live, that entire shift will go from yourself to them. Their brain will reward them with the big four, the endorphins, the dopamine, the oxytocin, and the serotonin. And their brain says, this person makes me feel safe. They see me, they're present for me, and it's all about me. So when you can do that shift by simply shifting your language, you're saying the same things, same intent, but you're packaging it. Instead of packaging it like our egos and vanity want to do, we're packaging it for ourselves, where you're actually packaging it to deliver to them.
If you could share a story from your career that kind of challenged you or changed your beliefs, or was something quite unexpected, what would that be?
I remember humbling moments more than I remember great successes. Uh, I remember the first time I truly understood how self-centered I could be was, I mean, I had great experiences in the Marine Corps where I failed as a leader and I had humbling moments and I got better. But when it came to the world of working counterintelligence and recruiting sources and things like that, I'd been in the FBI probably about 5 years, and so I was getting better at this because you come in the FBI, you're a little bit older. I was 28 or 29 when I came in, so I was in my early to mid 30s. And I was good at recruiting sources. One of the reasons why I was good at recruiting sources was I had great teachers and guides around me. My squad mates were phenomenal. They had 20, 25 years in the FBI doing this. They were very, very good at it. I love people. And so that's a great requisite to do good at recruiting sources and having interviews and conversations. But because my life arc, where I grew up and how I grew up without money and having to heat our house all by wood and barely having the good enough grades getting into college, let alone the Naval Academy or all the things I want to do, it made me extremely, like you said earlier, self reliant and gritty, which is very self centered focused. Because when we're trying to make ourselves feel safe, we're very self centered. Not ego, like, look at me, I'm great. No, it's just self centered for survival. And so I had a lot of life reps of being that kind of gritty, resilient, look at me so I can survive kind of mindset, but I cared about others. And so the caring part about others was a good recruiter. If that too much self came in there, it kind of derailed it. And so I was recruiting this one confidential human source, and I was on a roll. I was really good at this. I was getting people on board. People are signing up. They're helping catch spies and all this. And this one individual, I had one meeting with him. I thought it went fantastic because I'm saying, hey, we're going to do all these great things together. And yeah, I know you're a busy PhD student at Columbia University, but I just kept talking about the things I wanted to do, how I wanted to do them, and how I wanted to take care of him by doing X, Y, and Z. Most of the time that'll work. But what I was doing was I was talking about things that I wanted to do the way I wanted to do them. I completely ignored, unintentionally, everything going on in his life. And so I tried calling him back the second time, and he wouldn't pick up the phone. I call again. He wouldn't answer. I send him an email. He wouldn't answer. I finally switched up phone numbers because he had caller ID, and he picked up the phone. I said, Sean. I said, what's going on, man? We're supposed to get together. And he goes, oh, man, I can't work with you. I said, why? And he goes, because he says, you want things. I have no idea. You're not making a lot of sense to me, and it's just not compatible." And he hung up. And that was a huge piece of humble pie, because I went back to my supervisor, who knew me to be a great source recruiter, and said, "We have to close him down." He goes, "Why? You're so great with..." I said, "I blew it." He goes, "How did you blow it?" And I said, "Because I made it completely about me, and I completely ignored his what? When we look at those 4 keys of communication, I did not seek his thoughts and opinions. I did not talk in terms of his priorities. I wasn't curious about him, and I didn't give him a choice. I completely blew through those 4 things. Now, granted, I was a friendly guy, I was a nice guy, but I made it all about me and not about him." And that was, that was after 5 years. Now, granted, those ones were few and far between, but when you blow it, you know it. And I blew it hard. I don't think I ever blew it like that ever again afterwards, because I remember it very, very vividly.
What's interesting in leading a life as a spy?
What's interesting? It's not as interesting
Yes.
as people think. That's the interesting thing. It's a job. No, so probably the coolest thing is you do impact the national security of the United States and the world. I have literally interviewed people that have given us information that prevented wars, and that's pretty significant. And the people you work with on the counterintelligence side are generally really, really, really well-trained, intelligent people. And if it's an adversarial nation, it's a mindset. It's not, it's just politics. And if you can put politics aside and make the connection as a human being, I didn't work with any bad people. I worked with phenomenally great people that were very humbling to work with and collaborate with and try to recruit. And I don't care what you call it. Um, it was I was very fortunate to work with some phenomenal people from around the world that made massive difference in the security of the world. And that was probably the coolest part.
When you're recruiting someone, how do you look for that intelligence?
So the first thing you do when you're recruiting someone, you aren't recruiting anyone. You're looking for someone that has priorities and pain points that they aren't willing to share with someone, because they don't want to come across as being vulnerable in any way, and they're not. They just have challenges in their lives. So you're trying to identify people that have a challenge, priority, or pain point of they want a better education for their children. They don't want their children growing up under like Putin's regime, because Putin's an oligarch. There's a horrible individual that doesn't treat his people well. And that maybe their parents have elder care issues, whatever it is. It's issues and challenges we all have. I'm just looking for people that have those kind of challenges already. You don't flip someone and convince anyone to do anything. No, you are just making yourself available to solve a problem they know that they've had for a very long time. And I'm offering myself as a person they can trust to solve that problem. In reciprocity, I'm looking for information to protect the national security of the United States and our NATO allies. So it's kind of an interesting way to approach it. You don't flip anyone. You just are there to serve them, serve everyone. It's the ultimate form of hospitality. There's no doubt. It's kind of crazy.
And that's a good way to look at it. What's emotional intelligence for you?
Emotional intelligence is the balancing of those 5 factors. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. Emotional intelligence is everything, though. To me, it's a balancing of knowledge of self, knowledge of others, empathy, decision-making process, and emotional stability. Those are kind of the big ones for me for emotional intelligence.
Because how I see emotions, because humans are all emotional beings, and why I asked you that question is I imagine as a person who's worked in intelligence to have a more analytical and rational mind, right? And you have to take over that emotional part of the brain. When you look at it from a neurobiological perspective, there's the limbic system and there's the prefrontal cortex.
Yep.
And the limbic system is the emotional part of your brain, and the prefrontal cortex, it evolved recently, and it's the rational part. It's what makes humans, and it takes a bit of training to have that when to use that limbic system.
I think it's like with with everything we've been chatting about, it's about maintaining a dichotomy. So it's a dichotomy between science and emotion, and maintaining the balance between the two, because both are equally important, and you can't really function effectively if one is out of balance from the other. And so I use emotion a lot because I'm a very emotional person. But at the same time, though, in order to problem solve, I need to engage my stoic mind, my problem solving mind, to work the problem. And that is probably the most common phrase I use in every single situation, whether it's with my own kids or anyone else's. Okay, so this happened. Put aside your emotional reaction to it. Work the problem. What's your goal and objective? What are you going to do to fix it? How are we going to move on from here? So it's always asking what questions. So why questions engage the emotions. What questions make us be objective and focus on a cognitive means to move forward. So I'm always asking what questions when things get emotional, because it keeps us focused on things and not the why. Understanding why is fine, but why gets us wrapped up in very subjective observations. Subjective observations in problem solving for me are, they're slow moving and they get irrational a lot of times. So I maintain objectivity by asking what questions. But with human beings that are now you're collaborating with, you have to know what they need in those moments. Do they need someone to listen, or do they need someone to problem solve? That's probably one of the biggest challenges we have when interacting with someone. I ask my son that all the time, or my daughter, or anyone else that is having a really rough time, a really bad day. I say, is today a day you need dad's ear, or do you need dad to problem solve with you? What are we doing today? Because I can do both.
That that's an interesting perspective. It's just that simple one word from what to why that makes the mind go to a different zone. It's
It
a
does.
really interesting perspective. Who's a good leader? How do you inspire, or how does a person cultivate that character of a good leader in yourself so that you can inspire people for change, or just be the best version of yourself?
So I think there's three pillars of leadership that I think are really
Mm-hmm.
important. And first of all, leaders create safety. They create a safe environment for others, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And that's what creates that circle of the golden circle, as Simon Sinek calls it, of trust. Because if people around you don't trust each other and feel safe, they won't innovate and solve problems. And so leaders create safety. Leaders also solve problems. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many times, whether it's politics or something else, that someone likes pointing a finger. Leaders don't point figures, they solve problems. And so, what I'm always looking for in a leader is someone who is a problem solver, not a finger pointer. So, they create a safe place. They solve problems that are in line with the objective and the mission we have to accomplish. And finally, leaders are resources for the success of others with no expectation of reciprocity. They are there for their people, for their success, for their prosperity. In other words, they're helping them overcome any obstacles, challenges, priorities, or pain points in their lives, and they're doing so because it's the right thing to do, not because they're trying to use that as leverage against them in any kind of reciprocity type of way. So leaders create safe places, they accomplish goals, missions, objectives, solve problems, and they're resources for people. And they all do this because it's the right thing to do.
So less ego. Why do we even have ego?
Keeps us safe. We're born with
Hmm.
egos. It's
It's
but again, so ego to me, it's a balancing of another dichotomy: confidence with humility. If we had no confidence, we wouldn't. So go back to ancient tribal man. If we had no confidence, we never would have left the cave. But humility keeps us open eyes around us as well. So too much humility, we're a carpet to be walked on. Too much ego, we're too much vanity and bravado, and no one wants to work with us. So it's maintaining a dichotomy of humility and confidence, which is really, really key and critical, and that's ego. It's having a healthy ego for survival. It's having a healthy ego to lead and inspire, but keeping it in balance with humility so we can constantly be not just a teacher, but also a student. And that is the balance of the two, because that I think is really important for us to help move down our path, because our ego allows us to teach, mentor, and guide others. And our ego also allows us, when in check, to be a great student of others, because no one is one or the other. We're all both.
it's about that exact balance of things, the yin and yang of things, and
Huge yin and yang.
Every moment we have to be there.
100%.
Read me. Like if you're looking at me from a body language perspective, what does it show? Let's see. Let's play that.
Neutral.
Neutral?
Comfortable. Yeah. And so you've been baselining the entire time. Some nice smiles throughout there, but you've been baselining the entire time. So I wouldn't say good, bad. It's just you are in present mode.
Interesting. Interesting. If somebody is an aspiring spy who wants to move their career in that direction, what would your advice be to them?
Get into sales and be really good.
Okay.
That's all
Okay.
it is. It really is, focus on understanding humans, understanding yourself. And so being good at anything starts with self.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to lead yourself, learn how to accept yourself for who you are. Do not seek, do not berate yourself for not being perfect. No one is. And just be curious about yourself and be curious about others and open minded to continually learning and being curious about others and what you can learn from them.
Interesting perspective. Uh, I was reading your book and I looked at this idea of stempathy.
Yeah.
Can we go there a bit?
Yeah, sure. I came up with that a number of years ago. That's in Sizing People Up. So it's a combination of stoicism, which I absolutely love because stoicism is asking the what questions and problem solving through good cognitive, thoughtful process and objectivity. But empathy is the other half of it, hence empathy, is because empathy is what we need in order to problem solve. Because in order to problem solve, we have to work with people. In order to work with people, we have to understand what they see from their perspective without judging it. Which, in other words, as Brene Brown talks about in her books, you have to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, and first you have to take your shoes off. And in order to do that, if you don't understand someone, if you don't like someone, good, get closer, because you're not close enough if that's the case. And so empathy is that. It's getting that optic from someone else's perspective. We did this in my world all the time. Before you try to recruit someone / sell them the product or service of American patriotism, we would tell the agent, hey, before you pitch this individual, this intelligence officer, research their life, live their life like they do, the same hours, the same stressors, the same daily routine that they do as much as you possibly can for at least a week or two. And then whatever line you plan on using with them, have someone walk up to you exactly the same way and have someone do that to you and tell me how that feels. In other words, be that person that you're trying to have that conversation with, and then have someone approach you in the same way you plan on approaching them, and then tell me how it feels. And if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. That's empathy. That is deep, deep empathy, understanding the context of someone else. And so empathy is the problem solving, but you can only problem solve with someone else. And so you have to have that deep, deep understanding of context and empathy.
It requires vivid imagination, I assume, because you have to have that story inside your head, because we're only accustomed to what we've experienced through our lives. What made you shift your career in this disciplined path towards you've been a Navy SEAL, spy recruiter after that. Was there a moment in your life where you feel like, okay, this was my path?
It was failing at everything else, just like all of us. I wanted to be an astronaut,
Okay.
and failed out of aerospace engineering at the Naval Academy. Wanted to be a Navy pilot. That didn't work out. Went Marine Corps. I wasn't a Navy SEAL. I was a Marine Corps officer. So it was everything I wanted to be when I was younger. Failed, and so part of it's a great question, a great statement, because instead of trying to walk the path that the world and the universe is not aligning with you, embrace what's presented. And so that's all I ever did. I just embraced what was presented to me and did the best I could with it. And I found that was the path. But the entire path is what? Having a good, healthy relationship. I can literally boil my life down and everything I did professionally, United States Naval Academy, United States Marine Corps officer, FBI agent for 22 years, ran a behavioral analysis program, recruited spies, taught at Quantico, all those things. I can boil it all down to my entire life's purpose is to, one, wake up every day and have a great day. That's it. And how do you have a great day? I do all I can to have a great, healthy conversation and make great relationships. All those things led to just understanding that.
That's a really good point to make a great day. Like it's about I think it's about trying different things. You might feel like you have an edge for this. You go, you try that you try to become an astronaut. You go there, it didn't work. Okay, then don't take it personally. What's the next thing? Try n number of different things with your life. Play it out with your life. Have that sort of mentality. What's your life's philosophy then?
Yeah, kind of riffing on that was, yeah, you don't know what you're meant to do until you figure out what you're not meant to do. I know very well what I was not meant to do. I've tried everything. I'm still looking. Life's philosophy. Good question. Healthy relationships. Just have great conversations and be there for others. I think that is it. I wish it was more complex. I wish there was a more, profound answer, but I literally think my life's philosophy is make the most out of every single moment you can by doing all you can for others, for those great conversations, those great relationships. I think if everyone just takes that second or two or minute and reflects of the happiest moments that you had, the happiest, not the proudest, because proud comes down to things you're doing. But when you literally think about what made you happy, when did you have joy emanating from your soul? And I guarantee you this, it didn't come from something you were doing. It came from someone you were talking to, someone you were interacting with. So make that your focus. And that is my philosophy of life. Make those moments. I seek out joy every single day.
Hmm. Because yeah, something that resonated because I was reading about you and you defined something, the difference between love and fear, right? Because love is exactly the opposite of fear.
Yeah, love is definitely the bedrock of everything, and uh, fear is just comes from a lot of places, and we all have it. It's change. We don't like change. We like routine. We fear the unknown. Education helps us with fear a lot. Again, great lessons from Nelson Mandela about the power of education helps overcome fear and ignorance, because that's where all negativity in the world really comes from. So, yeah, pretty simple. Reading any good books right now?
I'm reading Flow from
Yep.
Mihaly. Yeah, I'm reading that, the psychology of optimal experience, and a little bit of the Neil deGrasse Tyson's book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry.
So I interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson on my show.
Yes, I saw that. I saw
Oh my
that.
God.
That was amazing. How was he? Like, he has been such a phenomenal mentor for a lot
I
of
know.
people. The way
Blew
he
my first
thinks, the
bump.
way his mind works.
Yeah, I couldn't believe he said yes to come on my show. It was a highlight of my life, was being able to chat with him. Probably will be the most intelligent person I talked to in my entire life. He was a lot of fun. Very gracious. I was very happy. Yeah, I love his work, boy. And that's why I told him, I think one of the reasons why I was able to get him on the phone, on the show, was I said that and I said it during my episode, I said, your books are about the greatest profound empathy. Kind of shocked him because he's a scientist, and what he is, because he takes that big, huge cosmic perspective on humanity. He does deep empathy from all these different contexts. He does these thought experiments. Einstein said the same thing. You do thought experiments on all these different situations, which is empathy. I thought it was. I love him to death as well. Very good books. Because I have them all right over here too. I've read them all.
Because it's very hard for a person to connect to a wide audience, right? Because he's a scientist, and usually when you go into that side of things, it's very hard to connect to a large audience. But he's a good teacher. Maybe it's his oratory skills, it's how he presents itself to the world, but you feel that curiosity when you talk to him.
I asked him that, and he said that. Yeah, I asked him. I said, "So how is it you're such a good teacher?" He goes, "Well, if you're going to do something, why not try to be the best at it?" And so he studied how to communicate better. He said also he learned it from his dad, who was a great communicator, and his mom too,
Mm-hmm.
because they're always having dinner parties at their house when they were younger, growing up in the Bronx in New York. And so he had life reps in that area when he was younger, but he approaches everything with a very scientific methodology for trying to perfect it. And so when it came to him wanting to share science with the world, he knew he had to be able to present it in a way that people wanted to consume it. So it didn't come down to the way he wanted to share it. It came down to the way that people wanted to consume it, which is, again, that's empathy, that's context. So he did a great job on that. And his Star Talk show is very good too that he does.
Oh yeah, he brings that comedy side to it. I
Yeah,
listened to it with that guy. I forgot his name.
yeah,
Chuck.
I know who you're talking about. The
Yeah.
and what's really great is, and that's where the intersection of all these things lie for me too, and that is Eckhart Tolle, absolutely Buddhist philosophy and Stoicism, all these ancient philosophies, but they're all rooted in science as well. You know, I'm a big, massive believer in the quanta and energy. You know, and so when you science has always explained mysticism as time progresses. And I have no doubt in my own personal philosophy. I don't mean, I normally ask people what their belief system is before I share, because I don't want to be offensive in any way. But for my, I'm going to leap on this one with you. There's more to this than here to me. Our energy will continue, and it'll continue in another energy realm. It's another dimension, you know, and that's where Niel Degrasse Tyson did a great job explaining two-dimensional things. And he said, if you were a two-dimensional, did you ever watch Cosmos with him?
Yeah, I watched a bit. I watched Feynman's Cosmos a little bit, but
So if you saw, he did an episode where he's explaining how difficult it is for us to imagine other dimensions. And he gave an example, a caricature. He said, suppose you're a stick figure that lives in two dimensions on a flat paper.
okay.
And he says, this flat paper like this, let's see, like this, you know, all it is, and he's showing all these stick figures moving around on the paper. It's two dimensions, it's just this way and this way, right? He goes, if someone like us, we live in three dimensions, so we have this dimension like this. If we come down and we pick up our little stick figure and move them up like this to these two-dimensional figures, it completely disappeared. Where'd he go? What happened? They can't even imagine this. And meanwhile, us from our dimension, he's still right here. He's right here. But he can't comprehend because he's got no frame of reference. And all of a sudden you put that stick figure back down and he can't even explain what happened to him. So imagine us trying to explain 4, 5, 6 dimensions, because again, we don't have a frame of reference, but they're there. We know they're there. They've been proved to there. String theory and all that. You know, the fact that electrons are only observable when you observe them is proof of all this. So I'm a
Yeah,
massive believer.
I had a guest. His name was Thomas Turner, and I had this episode. Are we thinking or being thought? Like thought is a essential thing that we normal, and we see that it's my thought, but it's actually just happening to us. It's an interesting perspective, and he kind of defined it to me this way. It's like you can only prove bacteria exist when we make a microscope. So
Right.
science is always lagging behind what's out there.
100%.
And that kind of sums it up. Like I love that perspective. It kind of opened my mind. Like everything is out there, but this is how I view science, is because it's a good way to make and use of our physical environment out there, right? Anything that's out. So I have a good AC here, heater, mic, phone, camera, laptop. All this is science. It's well and good. I'm adapting my environment, but there's more out there. All the truths cannot be physically measured and validated, right? And that's where I think Tyson connects.
Yep.
Richard Feynman connects.
Yep.
They're allowing us to venture out into the unknown.
Yep.
And see, and you'll also love this guy called David Eagleman. Maybe you might have heard about him. And he kind of talks about the idea of Umwelt. Umwelt is like your, do you know the word Umwelt? It was new to me. Yeah, so it's like your sensory perception and the limits of your sensory perception. Yep. So you have eyes, nose, tongue, ears, and preferably skin. And I think the research show that we have 5 primary senses and about 40 to 60 secondary senses. And different animals have a different sense organs, and they perceive the same world in a different manner. Mm-hmm. Yep. We kind of have this unilateral or this bracketed view of the world that we see as reality, and we can't explain what's out there, right? Exactly what you explained with the 2D. And You'd love him. You'd love David Eagleman. If you haven't heard,
Yeah,
you should
I've
definitely
heard
look
the
it up.
author's name. I have a long list of books. I
But I
love.
would urge you to read Eagleman. His
Yeah, I
perspective
will.
was, I felt, different from others.
Yeah, so this stuff to me is wonderful, and I thought the Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, described this really well too. Which it's funny. I love listening to Buddhist monks, especially describe the universe in
Mm.
scientific form. So he said it like this. So someone's interviewing him before he died, and he said, don't monks, doesn't Buddhism believe in reincarnation?" He goes, "Well, it kind of depends on the sect of Buddhism because there's a lot of different beliefs and philosophies." He says, "But in general, here's the way it works." And I thought this was a beautiful way to talk about energy transition. And he goes, because they're talking about life and death. And people are saying, "What happens when you die?" And he goes, "Well, death is just a word. There is no death." He says, when a cloud, he said, let's use, our world. Does a cloud die? Or does a cloud then turn into rain? Does it transition to rain? So when a cloud transitions to rain, does the rain then die when it hits the ground and becomes a river? Or does it become transition to a river? And does the river die when it flows into a lake or an ocean? And does the lake and ocean die when it evaporates back into a cloud? Everything's in transition. Energy is always in transition. And so energy is constant. It's always there. And so just understanding that our energy will continue. That's what it is. And we are shoved and crammed into these, these these
Yeah,
water
it's the
bags, and there you go.
it's the ego latching to that subjective experience, right?
Yeah, deep,
Excellent,
deep,
excellent.
great conversations, Raj. I love this stuff, and that's how we. And so going circling back to everything we talked about today. So how do you recruit spies? Understand human
Okay.
beings and see where they're at on their path and have a conversation with them on their path where they're at and not force them onto your path. And if you're closer on the path, fantastic. If not, just adjust to their path and don't judge where they're at on their path, because we're all here to have a great experience.
Oh, I just remembered that's one other thing that I wanted to talk, because when you are trying to put them, you shove your opinion to them, a shield gets activated. It's
Yeah.
like the ego wants to defend it. That's an important point, I guess.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, when you start judging, shields go up. Arguing context is always a bad thing to do. And I never use that word always, and you haven't used the word never, but I guarantee you, when you do that, shields up, no information flow, no relationship.
Where can people find you with your work and what you're currently doing and all that you're giving to the world?
Really simple. Everything can be found on Google my name and you'll see me all over the place. But robindreeke.com, ROBINDREEKE.com. People Formula also is on there, but I've shifted it all. RobinDreeke.com, my YouTube channel, lots of YouTube videos of this. My podcast is Forged by Trust. Interviewed a lot of great people on there. I have 3 books out. My 4th book is coming out in October. It's called Unbreakable Alliances. Everything we talked about today is really at the heart of the next book and all the behaviors we need to forge great unbreakable alliances in life. So yeah, just check it out there, and easy to get in touch with. So I encourage everyone to reach out, follow, and tons of free resources. So if you didn't get enough Death by Robin today, there's more on there. And for anyone listening, I highly encourage you to do one more thing. Raj puts a lot of time and effort and energy into putting the great content together for everyone. So like this, subscribe, share it with everyone in your life, and bring more Raj into your life.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, man. And looking out for your book, and promise I'll read it.